For thousands of years, the Great Pyramids of Giza have stood in the desert like a challenge to the imagination. How did people with no cranes, no engines, and no modern machines move millions of giant stones into place with such astonishing precision? For a long time, the answer seemed almost impossible. But the real story is even more interesting than the mystery. The pyramids were not built by magic, and they were not built by slaves in the way older stories often claimed. They were built by organized workers, careful planning, and a level of engineering that was far ahead of its time. And if you keep watching, one of the biggest clues to how they were built comes from something many people never think about at all: the landscape around them. To understand the pyramids, you have to picture Egypt in a very different way. The Giza Plateau was not just empty desert. It was part of a powerful kingdom with skilled builders, strong rulers, and a huge river system that made large-scale construction possible. The Nile was the lifeline. It carried food, people, tools, and stone. Without it, the pyramids could never have happened. The Great Pyramid was built for Pharaoh Khufu, and it was part of a larger royal complex at Giza. But building a monument this massive was not one giant effort. It was a carefully managed project. Workers had to quarry stone, transport it, shape it, and place it exactly where it belonged. That means the real question is not just, who built the pyramids? It is, how did they control all of this work so well? Archaeologists now believe the answer begins with organization. Ancient Egypt was highly structured. There were teams of workers, supervisors, engineers, and planners. Some workers were permanent laborers, and others likely came from across Egypt during the time of year when farming slowed down. This was not a random crowd hauling stones in panic. It was a system, and that system left clues behind. Near Giza, archaeologists found workers' settlements, food remains, tools, and inscriptions that suggest a well-fed labor force. This matters because it changed the old image of how the pyramids were built. These workers were not just dragged in and forgotten. They were housed, fed, and organized. Some evidence suggests they even had names for their crews. That tells us something important. This was a project people understood as national work, not just forced labor. But feeding workers was only one problem. The biggest challenge was moving the stone. The pyramids were made from millions of blocks, and many of them were extremely heavy. Some stones came from local quarries near Giza. Others, like the fine white limestone casing stones, came from farther away. Granite used in inner chambers came from Aswan, far to the south. So how did they move all of it? One of the strongest theories is that they used the Nile and canals to bring stone close to the site by boat, especially during periods when the river was higher. From there, workers likely dragged blocks over land on sledges. In fact, there is ancient evidence showing that wetting the sand could reduce friction and make sledges easier to pull. That is a simple idea, but a brilliant one. It does not sound glamorous, it sounds practical, and that is exactly why it makes sense. Then there is the question of the pyramid shape itself. How did they raise stones so high? This is where several theories come in. Some archaeologists believe they used straight ramps. Others suggest zigzag ramps along one side. Another idea is a spiral ramp wrapping around the structure. There is no single universally accepted answer, and that is important to remember. The evidence strongly supports the use of ramps, but the exact design may have changed as the pyramid rose. In other words, they may have used more than one method. The main point is this: they did not need impossible technology. They needed smart planning. The builders also had to make the pyramid nearly perfect. And they did. The Great Pyramid is aligned with incredible accuracy to the cardinal directions. That means ancient Egyptians understood surveying far better than many people realize. They used the sky, simple tools, and careful measurements to set the foundation. Once the base was level, the whole structure could grow upward with remarkable precision. But here is where the story gets even more impressive. The pyramid was not built all at once in a blur of labor. It was likely built over many years, step by step, with teams working on different parts at the same time. Some crews cut stone, some transported it, some prepared the slope, some laid the blocks. This was a massive machine made of people, timing, and discipline. And the biggest revelation may be this: the pyramids were not an accident of brute force. They were the result of a state that could coordinate thousands of people, control supply lines, and solve engineering problems in real time. That is what made Giza possible. Not one genius, not one secret machine, but a whole civilization working at a scale that still amazes us today. Even now, scientists continue to study the pyramids, and not every detail is fully settled. That is part of the reason they remain so fascinating. We know enough to see the brilliance of the builders, but not so much that the mystery disappears completely. The surviving evidence shows a world of skilled labor, careful logistics, and bold design. So how did the pyramids of Giza get built? With stone, yes. With ramps, likely. With boats, sledges, and planning, almost certainly. But above all, they were built with human intelligence and organization on a breathtaking scale. That is the real wonder of Giza. A monument that looked impossible was built by people who understood how to turn a kingdom into a construction project. And thousands of years later, we are still asking the same question, because the answer is not just about pyramids. It is about what human beings can achieve when knowledge, labor, and purpose come together.